This podcast is being brought to you in part by our podcast guest, author, speaker, and TV series creator, Paul Dowdy. Paul has just had his book, Resilience, My Ultimate Superpower, Empowering Young Lives to Overcome Challenges, released and now available from Amazon. This book is a labor of love dedicated to empowering young minds to navigate and overcome life's hurdles with strength and resilience. This book draws inspiration from the true story of Paul Dowdy, who grew up in the tumultuous 1970s, facing childhood domestic violence, abandonment, and the challenges of unsupervised teenage years, having to learn to make adult decisions to stay alive. Paul's candid storytelling and insightful reflections highlight the pivotal moments that shaped his life. The book teaches us that resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about growing stronger with each challenge faced. This is so important for our young people to know. Paul's journey exemplifies how we can harness our inner strength, maintain a positive mindset, and see beyond immediate struggles to embrace a life of resilience and empowerment. The book focuses on helping young adults and is a must-read for the 14 to 18 age set, parents, mentors, and educators to read and get a fresh perspective on the challenges our youth face from the digital landscape, academic stress, peer pressure, depression, and anxiety, just to name a few covered in the book. With statistics such as 44% of teens feeling persistently sad and hopeless, 40% feeling lonely, 29% experiencing poor mental health, depression, and anxiety, and only 35% of struggling teens seeking help, it is imperative that the book be read and understood. Paul's book is so special that it is going to be made into a TV drama series based on his life. Resilience, My Ultimate Superpower, Empowering Young Lives to Overcome Challenges, is available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle formats from Amazon. Information about the book will be listed in the podcast note. Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Wrap, the podcast of overcomers and the podcast of useful information to better our daily life and mental well-being. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. I would like to thank all of our great listeners, viewers on our YouTube channel, It's a Wrap with Wrap, the podcast uncut, and our sponsors and supporters for making the podcast such a success. The podcast is being heard on all major platforms and the podcast website, itsawrapwithwrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and great products and services offered from our sponsors. And now featuring the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our past guests have authored and which can be purchased on Amazon. My guest today is Australian author, illustrator, and international speaker, Andrew Matthews. Andrew's books, including Being Happy, Follow Your Heart, and Bouncing Back, have sold over 8 million copies in 48 languages. Andrew has addressed over 1,000 corporations on 5 continents on attitude, enjoying work, and resilience. His clients include McDonald's, Lenovo, Honda, HSBC, Motorola, Walmart, and Citibank. Andrew is popular with CEOs and surgeons, with teenagers, and even prisoners. Andrew's latest book is Bouncing Back, How You Rebound from Disappointment and Disaster. Andrew is an accomplished artist, and all his books are lavishly illustrated with his own cartoons. He is with us today to talk about his devotion to the subject of happiness and about his latest book, Bouncing Back. From Queensland, Australia, welcome, Andrew, to the podcast.
Hi, Ron. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's great having you here, and an honor. tell us a little bit about yourself growing up and what your life was like for you in the early years.
I was a tiny kid, Ron. I was the smallest kid in school. In high school, I was the smallest boy and smaller than all the girls. And I remember going home to my mother and saying, I hate this. Everyone makes fun of me and they say that my school bag is bigger than me. And my mum said, well, wait a year. There's got to be some smaller kids that come to the school next year. So I waited another year and then another year, and I was still the smallest kid when I was in third year high school. And I said to my mother, I hate this. And she said, well, there's some things in life that you can change, but you can't change your height and you can't change your parents. So she said, you've just got to change what you can and accept and deal with what you can't. So the big kids used to throw me over the fence and lock me in cupboards and
Oh
the
no.
stuff that goes along with being tiny.
You were
But
bullied. You were bullied.
yeah, but I mean, it was
It was more on a fun
it was not brutal. They did it because they could, not because they hated me. I saw it in that
yeah,
light,
yeah.
but it was still an introduction for me to the idea, thanks to my mother, of the fact that some things you can change, some you can't, and deal with the things that you can't change. So I grew up loving drawing and painting, but I thought I should become a lawyer. So I began law school. Before I said no, I want to do what I really love. And I studied drawing and painting in your country at the Art Students League of New York in the 70s. But even when I was 25, I was still not doing as well. I was not as happy as I thought I should be. In fact, at 25, Ron, I made a shocking discovery. I discovered that the happiest people I knew had bigger problems than me. And that made no sense. So I thought that as my life got easier, I would be happier. But I had these people around me who had either recovered from cancer or they had lost their jobs or maybe they'd lost loved ones way too soon. A lot of those people had a better attitude than I did. And I wanted to know how happy people think and how I could be more like them. I wanted to understand how some people are more resilient than others, and I wanted to be resilient like them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that led me on a quest, reading hundreds of books and studying people that I observed were happier and dealt with life better than I did. And ultimately, that led me to my first book, which was called Being Happy.
Well, I was going to ask you that. So at age 25, you discovered something about happiness, that happy people had bigger problems than you.
Yes. And so that was the first understanding, I guess, that it's not what happens to you, but it's how you think about what happens to you. And I'm sure all of our listeners have been inspired by people around them who seem to have said, well, I can deal with this and I will deal with my challenges one day at a time.
Right.
And so my thought is, Ron, that nothing is more important than being happy. I mean, if we've all seen people who are rich and famous and they take their lives.
Yeah.
And I'm not even suggesting that happiness is necessarily easy. In fact, the reason I've now written 12 books about happiness and attitude is because it's not easy. And sometimes we need some help, and always we need some hope.
That's for sure. That's for sure. How would you describe your state of happiness before your authorhood? And tell us what you decided to do on October 19th, 1983.
Yeah. I would say that I had no excuse. I was somewhat of a complainer. I didn't forgive myself for my shortcomings. I didn't forgive other people for their shortcomings. And I basically had a less than positive attitude. And I had no excuse because I grew up with loving parents, and I, I was able to deal with school. I had all my arms and legs. I was not ill. And yet I realized that I had no excuse for having a fairly average attitude. And it was on October 19th, 1983, that I looked at my life and I made a quick assessment. I thought, well, how am I doing in romance? No, not very well. Am I prosperous? No, not very. Am I as happy as I thought I would be by now? No. I thought I need to change. I thought I'm 25. My life is probably about a third over. I need to change something now. And on that day, I decided that from today, I will see my life differently. I will be kinder to myself. I will be kinder to others. I will embrace opportunities, and I will throw myself into life with joyful enthusiasm and abandon. I adopted a kind of a motto for myself, which was, if in doubt, do it. And not that I should go and do dangerous things where I might kill myself, but I just thought I need to be more courageous, more enthusiastic. And my life changed from that day, Ron. And I'm sure you read about that in my book, Bouncing Back. And it wasn't that it changed 100%, but the direction that I was headed changed. The trajectory changed.
And you decided to take all the opportunities that came your way, correct? If
Yes.
opportunities opened up, you were gonna go down that
And, and
path.
I and I decided that I would look for opportunities
Okay.
and create opportunities. So I can remember when I met my now wife, Julie, and Julie became my publisher. And she is this delightful, elegant, unstoppable force of nature. I remember when I met her and I said, I'm going to ask her on a date, which I would never have done before because she was sophisticated and classy and beautiful and way out of my league. But I remember when I decided to write my book, Being Happy, and what did I know about writing books? And I was not a psychologist, but I was now in this new frame of mind that do whatever I can, embrace opportunities. And so I share that because I think it applies to all of us, that as we look for opportunities, as we say, I'm going to do whatever I can and I'm going to look on the bright side of life because it's the only way to live, then life gets better.
Why do you think you've devoted your life and 12 books to the subject of happiness?
I would never have done it if I didn't begin to get the most extraordinary feedback from readers. And I never anticipated this, but within weeks of Being Happy being published, I began to get letters from people who said, your book has really helped me. It's giving me hope. And for the last 35 years, there's barely a day goes by that I don't get an email or a message on Facebook or a message in LinkedIn or just a text from somebody that says, your book with its simple messages have given me hope and changed my life or changed my husband's life or my children are doing better. And so it's not that I wrote just 12 books about happiness, but they address living a more fulfilling life from different points of view. So Being Happy is broadly about an introduction to happiness being a daily decision that we make. Follow Your Heart is very much about enjoying our career, finding purpose in our life and work. bouncing back, my most recent book is really about resilience and has many stories about people who overcame the most shocking setbacks and tragedies.
Yeah.
And not all of them, some of them are just massive disappointments. So, but it was because early on I got a sense that people were benefiting and for our listeners who haven't seen my books, the language is simple and they are filled with my cartoons because
Yeah.
I think that books should be entertaining. Books should be easy to dive into. And in a sense, I write books for people who don't read much. Hopefully, they don't insult people who are readers and intellectual, but I think messages can be very simple and also be very useful.
Yeah, I really
And
enjoyed the illustrations.
thank you. Yeah. So it was because I began to receive so much feedback from readers. And I mean, for example, I got a message from a lady and she said, my husband, who never reads, picked up your book from our coffee table and has been quoting you ever since. And he's a changed man. And I ran into a fellow. I was in Malaysia once and I was in a shopping center and a fellow called Teku approached me and he said, you don't know me, but I'm Teku and I'm from Indonesia. And when I was at my lowest point, growing up in Indonesia, I was in college in Indonesia, and I was so broke that I could only afford to eat once a day, and sometimes once every 2 days. And I didn't even own a shirt. I had to wear my girlfriend's shirt to school.
Wow.
He said, somebody loaned me your book, and I realized two things. He said it was the Indonesian version of being happy. He said, I realized two things. He said, number one, I choose my thoughts. And he said, the other thing I realized that I needed some goals. And he said, I set myself some goals. I said, I want to get my degree. I want to work for an international corporation. I want to have a wife and children, and I want to travel the world. And he said, and tears started to roll down his face. He said, today I'm the international business manager for a multinational corporation,
Wow.
Schlumberger. And he said, I live in a beautiful apartment in Malaysia. My children go to international schools. And he said, I drive a BMW. He said, I travel the world business class. And now he's been headhunted 3 times since we had that conversation in 2013. He is an absolute, just an extraordinary corporate captain of industry. So when I meet someone like that, I get inspired. People say to me, Andrew, where do you get your inspiration? I get it from readers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started out obviously from a different path. I'm a two-time male breast cancer survivor, and stuff happened along the way. There's a lot of stigma to it, and it's getting better, of course. But I went, I suggested to my group, malebreastcancerhappens.org, that we go on podcasts and spread the word around the world that men get breast cancer and it's not being covered anywhere. And I said, we need to not preach to the choir, but we need to talk to people, that don't know about it. And so we did that. We were in Australia, New Zealand, Africa, all over on a podcast. And somebody one day said to me, why don't you start your own podcast? And I said, I don't know anything about it. I wouldn't even know what to do. And they said, well, you got a decent voice and, maybe you could do your own. So anyway, I bought a microphone, I bought a headset, and I started out, not really knowing too much about it. And now it's 4 years later and we're all over the world. And I do get messages from people that how our podcast has helped them and our Facebook group has helped them. And so I know what you're talking about when because, I could have given up after a couple of episodes and said, enough's enough. But when that feedback comes, it really makes a difference and it inspires you to just keep going and keep pushing and you can do it.
Yeah. Well done, Ron, for what you're doing. And it is, it's the cream on the cake, isn't it? To hear from
Yeah.
people who say,
Oh yeah.
you gave me hope.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know how much that means to me and to you and to everybody out there listening to this podcast. You can make a difference in many people's lives. And you probably are making a difference in people's lives. You just aren't getting the feedback all the time, but people can make a difference. And you have to think of living your life like that. How can I make a positive difference in the world? Anyway,
And yeah,
yeah, go
and we
ahead.
realize that many people are helped, but they don't think to let us know. And so for every one person that does tell us something, we're helping others who never think to contact us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Moving on. Why does gratitude matter?
The
That's a
great
big
thing
question.
about gratitude
Mhm.
is that you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. You can't be resentful and angry at the same time. Or you can't be resentful and grateful at the same time, I should say. So if we look at what is the common denominator for happy people and how happy people think, happy people focus on what they have, which is essentially gratitude, and unhappy people focus on what's missing. I illustrate that with a cartoon in one of my books where there's a guy and he's got a big smile on his face and he's eating a single slice of cake. And the caption is happy people focus on what they have. And in the second panel, there's a very miserable looking guy and he's got an entire cake minus one slice. And the caption is unhappy people focus on what's missing. And we've seen that for those of us that have traveled and we go to poorer countries than ours and we see people with so little and yet they are so joyful.
Yeah, I noticed
So
that.
that teaches us.
I would like to encourage you to embark on a transformative journey through the #1 Amazon bestseller our podcast guest and supporter, Gina Economopoulos, has authored titled Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk, which is a stirring memoir tracing Gina's path from despair to redemption. From Gina's humble beginning as a bartender to the sacred halls of the convent and through the trials of tumultuous relationships and alcoholism, Gina grapples with loss of faith, grief, and the pursuit of self-discovery. With honesty and authenticity, the readers witness her quest to reclaim her life amidst chaos. You will be drawn into the landscape of her struggles, from the agonizing decision to leave the convent after 12 years of service to the numbing embrace of alcoholism. Every step of her journey is fraught with uncertainty and pain. Through resilience and determination that she acquires, Gina begins the process of healing, letting go of the past and making new connections in the present. This book is more than just a memoir. It is a testament to the power of the human spirit to find healing in faith, time, and self-discovery. Her story serves as a reminder that however challenging the road ahead may seem, there is always hope waiting to be discovered in the most unlikely of places. Buy the book and let Gina's words inspire you to confront your own struggles with grace and resilience and emerge stronger on the other side. This is a book so powerful, a movie could be made about it. You will not be disappointed buying this book. The book is available from Amazon in paperback and Kindle format. Details will be listed in the podcast notes.
Number one, that it's not about what we have, but it's about what we focus on. And it also underlines the fact that we find what we look for. So as we begin to say, I'm a gratitude finder, I'm a good finder, I look for things for which I can be grateful, then we find more and more of those things, and they don't need to be big things. So one of the things that I've noticed about the happiest people is they're not even necessarily grateful for big things. They're not grateful for even the big house or the swimming pool or the new car. Sometimes they're grateful for a conversation or a phone call or to see a flower when they're walking the dog. And as we develop the habit of looking for little things and being grateful for smaller things, so we are beginning to think like the happiest people think.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. Kind of leads into my next question, but you might have answered it. What did you find to be the biggest difference between happy and unhappy people?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. It is the defining difference that happy people, it's the questions that we ask ourselves. And even in the middle of a, a disaster or when things happen that we didn't want or that don't go our way,
Right.
happy people happy people have the habit of saying, what's one good thing about this? You're driving to work and you get stuck in traffic, and maybe 80% of people will be angry or disappointed, but there's that 20% that can say, well, what's one good thing about being stuck in traffic? Well, A, I'm not walking. B, I can listen to Ron's podcast. So that's got to be good.
There you go.
Yeah. And so negative thoughts are like rats, and you get one rat, and before you know it, you're surrounded by them. You get one negative thought, and before you know it, you're surrounded by them. It's like we get on a frequency where we just keep on getting to the next negative thought. I hate being stuck in traffic. This always happens to me. This is the
Right.
last thing that should be happening today. And I've got to cook dinner and people don't appreciate me. My mother always told me I was making a mistake marrying this guy. Now I've got a headache. Maybe it's a tumor. It's just like, that's how life goes.
It's a
And so if we
snowball
can,
effect.
yeah, but the minute we start to say, hey, what is one thing about this I can be grateful for? We stop the invasion of the rats or the negative thoughts, and the day starts to get better.
Yeah. I always go back to that old saying, the people who say, why is this happening to me, need to start saying, why is this happening for me? And if you take that
Yes.
approach, it just turns everything around. It really does.
Yes. Yeah,
How
well
can
said, Ron.
how can someone, here's a good one for you. How can someone enjoy a job they don't even like?
Well, the first thing we can do is imagine that we got to work tomorrow and the boss said, go home. We don't need you anymore. You're finished. When we start to say, well, how would I feel if I didn't have this job? Suddenly we start to say, well, I would miss all my colleagues. I'd miss the social life. I'd miss the feeling that I'm contributing and that I'm growing and learning some skills. All of that gone. So the first thing we need to do is say, how happy would I be if I didn't have it? The next thing is to realize that the way that we enjoy any activity the most is by giving our best. And we don't do our best to please our boss. We don't do our best when we're in school, we don't do our best to please our teachers. We do our best because it's the only way to be happy. So, number one, we think, what if I didn't have this job? Number two is we say, I will give my best for as long as I am here. This may not be the ideal job. It may not be the job that I dreamed about, but even if I'm going to quit at 4:30 today, I will do my best until 4:30. That helps. The next thing to realize is that as we continue to put our best effort into whatever job we have, we continue to develop our skills. We're out there being seen by people, and someone may come along and headhunt us, in which case that's progress, or
Yeah.
we may get the confidence to begin to do the thing that we really want to do. And the other point that I would make, Ron, is that there was a professor in the University of Kansas, Shane Lopez, no longer with us, but his particular interest was, what is it about people who love their jobs? Do you just find the perfect job, or is it about following your bliss? There's lots of talk these days about follow your passion, follow your bliss. So what he did was he found or interviewed 8,500 employees in a variety of companies, and he asked them, do you love your job? And it turned out that about 1,100 of those, or 13%, said, I love my job. And then he interviewed each one of those. And he said, how do you find the perfect job? And here's the thing, almost without exception, they said, you don't find the perfect job. You find a good job and you put your heart and soul into it, and you nurture people and you're kind to people and you surprise people and you build a culture and a community. And he said, one day you discover that a good job became wonderful.
Wow. That's great. It's a lot of mindset, isn't it? A lot of mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've all had that experience. We get picked up by an Uber driver, and one is delightful and one is grumpy, and they're
Yeah.
doing exactly the same job.
Exactly.
And then you say, why?
Yeah.
You say, why? Why, why do you feel like this about your job? And they usually give you the same answer. One says, well, I'm grumpy because I'm dealing with people all day. And the other guy says, I'm happy because I'm dealing with people all day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this question is for you personally. What does being happy mean for you? And those things you will mention, do you have them in your life?
The first thing is waking up in the morning and saying to myself, I'm happy to be me. We perhaps grow up, and now with social media, the tendency is we look at what other people do and what other people have, and we might drift into that, well, other people seem to have a better life than I do. So for me, I aim to and I want to wake up and say, I'm happy with who I am and where I am. It's important for me to feel that I'm making a contribution to make the world a better place. And I seek to do that by the books I write and by the presentations that I give. But making a contribution for all of us is critical. And I also want to have people in my life who I love and who love me. And we all need at least one of those people. So being happy with who you are, feeling that you're making a contribution, and being loved and loving at least one person is a pretty good start.
I would say so, for sure. How do you respond to people who are not blessed with opportunities, the loved ones about happiness?
Sorry, how do I react to people
You know,
who are not blessed with?
how do you respond to people who are not blessed with opportunities, that feel they don't
Um,
have any opportunities?
yeah, we need to start wherever we can. There's always, if we're talking about in terms of friendship and relationships, whoever is in your immediate sphere, orbit, be kind, be nice to them, and relationships will flower. Do whatever you can with what is under your nose. Too often we say, well, And if we're talking about the job we're in, we say, well, if I had Ron's job, I'd really put in an effort, but I've got my stupid job, so I just goof off.
Yeah.
And the fact is, you embrace whatever is under your nose, and you do your best. And sometime, probably when you least expect it, you'll see another opportunity, or someone will say, I like what you do and I want you to work with me or for me. One thing will lead to another. And it's like that wherever. If you might be, a folk singer, and you're singing in a club to 3 people, and you say, if I had 1,000 people listening to me, then I'd really put on a performance. But I've just got these 3 drunks, so you know why bother? No, you do you do a show for those 3 people, and next week you'll have 5, and next month you might have 15 or 20, and you'll get to the 1,000. But you start with what you have.
Good advice. Good advice. What in your opinion do we learn from failure?
Well, first thing about failure is it's not failure that crushes us. It's what hurts most is never having tried. So if we are out there giving our best effort and failing, we're probably going to be happier than the guys that aren't even giving it a shot. And we need to appreciate just how much successful people fail, how much a winning golfer, how often a winning golfer doesn't win the golf tournament, how often somebody who's out there trying to sell insurance gets rejected. I mean, it's all about just stepping back out there and doing it one more time. My own story was, the first book I wrote was a children's book, and I'd heard that it can be tough to get published. So I thought, here's a strategy. I will get 60 copies of my manuscript, and I will get a list of the top 60 publishers in the world who publish in English, and I will send them all at once copies of my manuscript of my first book. I thought, that's got to work. I mean, at least 5 are going to like it, or maybe 3, and then I'll choose who I want to work with. So within a couple of weeks, I started to get these rejection slips in the mail, and soon I had 10 and 25 and 37 and 49 and 56 and 57 and 59 rejections, and 60 and 61. I only sent out 60 manuscripts. One publisher wrote to me twice and said, forget it. And so that led to my second book, which was Being Happy. But that was rejected by 17 publishers. Before publisher number 18, well, they sold 3 million copies. So it took me, let's see, 61 and 17, 78 rejections, I think, before I had a book published. But it's not unusual. And for our listeners who may be thinking,
Brian Hite is a modern day Renaissance man, seamlessly integrating Eastern and Western philosophies to empower individuals to overcome mental barriers and achieve peak performance. He has diverse expertise as a Hollywood stuntman featured in television shows and films such as Superman, Haunted Mansion, The Iron Claw, Stranger Things, and The Cleaning Lady, to name just a few. And he is also a performance psychologist, author, and certified mental performance consultant, making him a sought-after authority in unlocking human potential. Brian's book, Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential, is a collection of 183 short essays on topics gleaned from a range of sources spanning both miles and millennia. Each essay highlights a familiar challenge such as failure or stress. Reading the book, you will discover the importance of the present moment, the ways in which our thoughts affect our emotions and behaviors, ways to develop and maintain confidence and motivation, strategies for maximizing overall well-being, simple techniques that make a dramatic impact on the quality of our personal, professional, social, and family lives. The book will guide you how to free yourself from the counterproductive thought patterns that have unconsciously been impacting your quality of life and why you think what you think, do what you do, and teach you how to leverage that knowledge for the benefit of yourself and those around you. The daily challenges we face in today's modern culture seem unique to our current place in history, but they are not. This book explores that idea while guiding you in overcoming those challenges daily. To quote Brian, every day we begin again. Every day is an opportunity for growth, development, change, and improvement. Every moment is a chance to assess our current circumstances and steer our thoughts and actions in more helpful, productive directions. Buy the book, unlock your full potential, and find the wisdom inside of you. The book is available from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle format. Information about the book will be listed in the podcast notes.
Well, how many times might I get rejected by a publisher? Well, you might only need to get rejected by 30 or 50 publishers. But for me, I look back and think, what if I'd never persevered, and how would my life look if I'd given up?
Yeah. And you can't give up. You gotta keep getting back up and trying.
And so here's the key, Ron. You've got to enjoy the process. If you are just out there doggedly saying, I hate this, but I'm going to keep doing it, nothing is ever going to happen, because the whole energy that surrounds you, people don't even want to be around you. They
Right.
don't even want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So it's not about just keeping on, but being miserable.
Right.
You've got to find ways to enjoy the process and find ways to improve, but celebrate the process. And usually when you least expect it, someone will come along and publish your book or join you in your project or employ you, whatever it is that you're trying to make happen.
So make it a pleasurable challenge.
Absolutely. And continue to be refining your craft. You most things don't work out as well as we'd hoped. We build a website hoping people will come, or we create a YouTube video hoping that it will go viral, or we write an ad, or we send a manuscript to a publisher, or we go on a first date. And most things aren't going to be as wonderful and amazing as we hoped. But if we can just enjoy the process, regardless of the results, and we get up tomorrow and again we do our best, then one day, and it's usually when we least expect it, something happens that is even better than we imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, your latest book, of course, is Bouncing Back. What was the spark that made you write it? Can you please tell us a little bit about it, and what do you hope the reader takes away from it?
Yeah. I tell the story of my stepson, Michael, who had a horrific car accident when he was 18, and the doctors wanted to switch off the life support. And my wife, Julie, fought the doctors and made them actually operate and remove a piece of his skull to allow his brain to expand, because his brain was swelling and it was going to kill him. And then she begged with them to keep him on life support for 3 days. And when we unplugged the machine after the 3 days, and the doctors had been basically harassing Julie to sign forms so that they could take his organs, because they said he'll help a lot of people. When they unplugged the life support, Michael breathed by himself, and Michael survived. He was severely brain injured. He couldn't speak, he couldn't walk, he couldn't really eat. And so began a 25-year journey of rehabilitation for Michael. and he has inspired us, and Michael's mother has inspired me. Michael now lives in his own apartment 2 minutes away from where Julie and I live. And we've learned so much about bouncing back with Michael. I've learned so much about Julie's attitude. People will say to Julie, how do you deal with having a severely disabled son? And Julie will say, I still have him. And he's a beautiful soul. And he's kind. And he's generous. And he's caring. In other words, she focuses on what she has. And I talked a little bit about acceptance earlier. Acceptance is so critical to dealing with, major challenges like that. And also gratitude, being happy with what you have. So I saw that there was the possibility to write a book that embraced some of the things that Julie and I had learnt in this journey with having a severely disabled son. I also believe, Ron, that we're all bouncing back from something. We're bouncing back from eating too much or spending too much, or bouncing back from a relationship that started out well. Or we're bouncing back from having lost someone that we cherished. So my thought was, if I could write a simple book about resilience that draws inspiration from people like Michael and many other people who I know. And there are really probably three things that I might highlight here that resilient people do. Number one is, whatever happens that they don't like and didn't want, first thing, they accept it. They say, I wouldn't have chosen this, but this is where I am. So let's say that you think you're going to get a promotion and you don't, or somebody drives into your brand new car and smashes it, or your girlfriend dumps you. There's a misconception, a myth perhaps, that says, well, if you don't accept what you don't like, you're not stuck with it. But the reverse is true. The minute you accept it, you say, I didn't ask for this, but this is what I've got. That's when you can begin to move on. And that's so acceptance is power, and that is what resilient people understand. The other thing that we learn to do in dealing with Michael and his injuries and wondering if he'd ever be able to do anything again is we just dealt with life one day at a time, one day after another. Let's not get drawn into how is it going to look 6 months from now, or we've got today, we're going to live life the best way we can. And the third thing that I would highlight that resilient people do is they imagine a better life. They say, well, this is where I am now, but where am I heading? Well, our life only gets better when we have a picture for our life getting better. More money in the bank begins as an idea, as a picture in our imagination. Being able to speak in front of a group begins as an idea. A happy relationship, a loving relationship begins as an idea in our mind. And so if we're going through tough times, we really need to have a picture of where we're headed. So those three things, being acceptance, living one day at a time, and imagining where we're headed, help us get through tough times.
Right. Makes resilient people. We hear a lot about forgiveness. Everybody has different ideas about it. What's your thoughts about forgiveness?
Firstly, let's admit it's not easy very often, but we don't forgive people for their benefit. Let's say you're my boss and you give me the sack. And I say, well, that's it, Ron. I'm never going to forgive you as long as I live. So who's suffering? Not you. You're probably at the movies and I'm up pacing the floor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, saying that bastard. So the idea, where do we get the idea that if we don't forgive people, they suffer? So I forgive you for my benefit. So what I would say about forgiveness is once we have that kind of clarity, it makes it easier. The next thing is that we say, well, even if it's tough to forgive a big thing like that, maybe I can start letting go of little things. So we perhaps begin with forgiving people who cut you off on the freeway. Start small. Maybe he's in a hurry. And I don't need to get angry with people who cut me off on the freeway or someone who seems a bit rude at McDonald's.
Right.
Maybe they're going through some kind of personal tragedy. So, yeah, those two thoughts.
Okay. For those out there listening, is there a formula for happiness? And what would you say are 3 tips to be happier?
I would say number one is, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier, we make a decision. We say, from today, I'm going to be happier. You see, we might argue, we might say, well, is happiness really a decision? Have you ever seen a 2-year-old playing around on the furniture in the lounge room and he falls on his head? And the first thing he does is he looks around. He looks around to see who's watching, and depending on the audience, he makes up his mind, am I going to laugh or cry? And we think that's really cute. But the fact is, we continue to live like that for the rest of our lives. Things happen, someone's rude to us, depending on who they are or what our circumstances are, we decide whether I'm going to be upset or not. If we just fell in love yesterday, I mean, we're much more tolerant. So happiness, just like with that toddler, is very much a decision we make. Another thing we can do is we can be mindful of our language and what we talk about. We all know that what we think about, we talk about. If you think about food, you talk about food. But the reverse is also true. What you talk about, you think about. So the more that you complain, the more that you will be thinking about things that make you unhappy. So we want to be happier, we stop complaining. The other thing is that miserable people seem to be, for the most part, very rigid. They demand that life should be a certain way and people should behave a certain way. And perhaps I should say angry more than miserable. Angry people say, well, my plane should arrive on time, or people should be more polite, or people should think like me. But the fact is, they don't. And if we observe people who seem to just go through life quite happily, they're much more flexible. So happy people have preferences. They don't demand that life or people should be a certain way. They may well say, well, I prefer that my flight arrives on time, but if it's late and if it arrives safely, I'm happy with that.
Sure.
Or I prefer that people are kind, or I prefer that people are thoughtful, but some people aren't, and I can deal with that. So in being happy, we say, I'm going to live my life having preferences rather than making absolute demands.
That's a great thought process you're using there. Now, we do not have enough time to delve into all the topics you write about to help us live a happy life, such as acceptance, bad luck, replacing negative thoughts, setting goals, and how to get better at anything. So I encourage everyone to buy the book, read it. You will not be disappointed. Andrew, what new projects are you working on right now?
I wrote a book for teenagers that was published in 2001, and a lot has happened in the world and in the lives of teenagers in the last 24 years.
That's for sure.
So so I'm kind of old to be doing it, but I'm delving into the challenges and the lives of teenagers. and updating that book. So there's lots of information about dealing with social media and bullying and sexting and all of that sort of stuff, online issues.
Yeah.
Writing an updated version of Being a Happy Teen, because there's a big need for that. So that book will be, I'm thinking, maybe 3 or 4 months away. I've done the cover, I've done most of the rewrite, I'm just doing some of the cartoons. So as with my other books, it will be available on Amazon, and when I can make the time, it'll be an Audible book as well.
Oh, excellent.
That's the big project at the moment, yes.
Andrew, how can people contact you if they want to contact you?
Well, firstly, I have a website, andrewmatthews.com.
Okay.
And if you would like to receive a newsletter every 2 weeks, and my newsletters are very brief, they consist of about 4 sentences plus a cartoon.
Yeah.
So if you would like an uplifting little message in your mailbox every 2 weeks, that's at andrewmatthews.com, and the pop-up sign-up box that'll be the first thing you see. I'm on YouTube, so you'll see videos on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all of my books are on Amazon in ebook and also in hard copy. And if you like Audible, say that again, Audible books with an Australian accent, then Follow Your Heart and Bouncing Back. I've done those books in Audible.
Okay. We're going to put that all in the podcast notes. I want to thank you, Andrew, for being on the podcast and sharing all this wonderful work you have done over the years on this subject and the energy and spirit you have spent to make other people's lives better. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope we can have you again when you have more books coming out.
Would love to, Ron. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at itsawrapwithrap@gmail.com. Our website is itsawrapwithrap.com. Our Facebook group, we have about 2,000 members in there. It is a private group, so if you want to join, you'll have to email me. I'll let you in. It's a Wrap with Rap. Instagram, It's a Wrap with Rap podcast. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. Our YouTube channel has all the podcast episodes. It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. I'd like everyone to please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap. This podcast is being brought to you in part by the veteran-founded Hero Soap Company located in Phoenix, Arizona. In today's environment, we must be aware of the products we apply to our skin. As a 2-time cancer survivor, I cannot afford to take chances, and I use these products myself. The soaps will leave you feeling clean and refreshed. All the products made by the Hero Soap Company are made in the United States with the highest quality ingredients, sourced from companies in the United States whenever possible. The products are made in small batches to ensure high quality and contain premium essential oils and fragrance. All Hero soaps are created without synthetic colorants, parabens, and sulfates that are irritating to the eyes, skin, mouth, and lungs, and are cruelty-free, meaning these products are not tested on animals. Each 5-ounce bar of soap is handmade in Phoenix, Arizona, and the body wash is available in 8 ounces with such refreshing scents as lime, bourbon, and frost. You will absolutely love this soap. Please also check out their gear for sale. All the products are reasonably priced. Being veteran-founded, the company understands the dedication and sacrifice that each family makes to serve their country. A portion of sales is donated back to charities such as Operation Finally Home, Operation Interdependence, and the Gary Sinise Foundation that are focused on helping veterans and our first responders. Over 1,000 bars have been sent to our deployed troops. Please check out their website, herosoapcompany.com, for pricing and a detailed description of all the products. Now, when ordering, please use the code RAP for a 10% discount. The company information will be listed in the podcast notes.